Good day. My name is Walter Muzangaza, and today we're asking the question, are you considering starting a business in South Africa? Now, I know one of two things for sure, is that you looking at this video or reading any of the articles that we're publishing or continue to be publishing means that you're either looking to start a business or you've already set on starting the business and you're just looking for supporting information on what other factors you need to be aware of. In which case, we say you're at the right place. You see, starting a business in your life is a very big milestone for most people, and it needs to be approached with the same amount of care and attention to detail that you would as if you were taking care of a baby. You need to be aware of so many small little variables that are happening in the environment around you so that you do not step on the wrong set of causes that will set in motion a chain of events that may negatively impact you or your business. You want to be able to make sure that it starts, it grows, it succeeds, and it continues doing so for a very long time. And in the series of articles that will be published under the name of Thought Masters Insights, we'll be looking at these sort of variables that help you see what is it that you can look at and what kinds of action can you try to take to mitigate the negative impacts of the variables around you. Some of them we can only prepare against, but some of them we can also prepare ourselves to take advantage of certain trends. So let's start with the three variables we talked about in the article. If you haven't looked at the article, please click on the link below and you'll be able to see the full article on Thoughtmaster's website or any of its social media sites. In this particular article, we focus mainly on three specific type of variables. The first is the fast-growing population in Africa. The second, we look at the digital revolution, the high adoption trend of digital technologies in Africa. And the third, we look at the changing trading landscape of the African continent itself. And all of these are interlinked in ways that at first may seem disconnected, but in the end they do show that they have an interlinking loop that feeds into each other and gives each other momentum. So let's start. The first variable that we're going to be looking at is the very big growth in population in Africa. In case you were not aware, Africa has the biggest population growth rate in the world right now. We're standing currently at around 1.2 billion people on the continent, all in different countries. And many people have taken notice of this fact that in 2025, some UN estimates predict that the African population in 2025, it would have increased by 50%, surpassing the population of China and India, and will be at around 1.8 billion. In the second half of the century, starting from 2050, the African population would have doubled to 2.4 billion from what it currently is right now, which is 1.2 billion. And by the end of the century, that number is expected to have doubled once again. Now, what does this mean for you and your business? What that essentially means is that there will be more people, and your business will have more customers should you start right now. It means that just as China backs its growth on its massive population, the majority of the Chinese companies that succeed are those that are just operating within the borders of China. The strength of the Chinese banks is mainly because they have a very big population to be able to meet that demand. The same thing is also going to happen for Africa should these numbers prove to be true. If the numbers increase so much, there will be a lot of customers, there will be a lot of mouths to feed, there will be a lot of houses to build, there will be a lot of services that need to be provided to be able to take care of this growing population's needs. And regardless of whichever area your business is operating on, you will have more customers. Even if it's a B2B business, you will have more businesses serving an expanded customer base. The second trend that we'll be looking at is the quick adoption of digital technologies. Now, for this one, I linked a very excellent article from Mckinsey in the article, and I would recommend that you go and look at that. However, what they essentially talk about is what we already know, is that in this day and age, most of the business activities that are taking place are supported heavily by technological infrastructure. It may be e-commerce mediated businesses, it may be communications, it may be looking for transport, looking for clothes, etc. Businesses that are small, that did not have any equal footing when it came to competition in the past, can now do so with considerable ferocity on the internet without having to have the huge setup costs that come with having brick and mortar stores. You see, the internet, just like in the physical world, customers, they only buy from the people that they recognize. If they've been seeing your brand for quite some time, they'll be familiar with it, they'll be more comfortable with it, which means that they're more likely to actually try to buy from you. And if they do have a good experience, they'll recommend it to their friends. With an expanding population, that will also mean a lot more customers. And if you're in Africa with the biggest population growth rate, you're standing in a very good position. But in this particular case, however, the whole point of me making this article is to try and draw attention to making investments in South Africa, to starting a business in South Africa. How exactly does it benefit you to start a business in South Africa? Well, that is linked to our third point, which is the changing African landscape. So, in the beginning of the year, there were rumors and there were facts and there were discussions being held of something called the African Free Trade Area Agreement. What this means essentially is that trading between African countries on the continent will be heavily encouraged, and it will not be subjected to a lot of taxes, a lot of duties, and a lot of levies. You will essentially be able to freely trade with your neighbors, with the neighbors of your neighbors, anywhere on the continent, very, very quickly. So how does this impact your business? You see, when you choose to build a business in South Africa, which is in a continent with the fastest growing population, you will find that South Africa has been one of the biggest economic players on the continent. They have the infrastructure to be able to support complex technological infrastructure. They have a tremendous amount of knowledge repositories. They have a strong base of networks and negotiation power when it comes to its African peers, even more so within the southern region. In the northern parts, you have Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, Ghana, Kenya, and all the other countries fighting for dominance on who gets to access which markets, etc. But in South Africa, in the southern parts of Africa, there are only a very few number of economic players that have such a huge amount of impact in that kind of saying. Starting a business right now will also allow you to be able to ride on that muscle that says, hey, look, if you start a business here, you not only have the strong manufacturing capacity, you manufacture locally, and you can ship it out to the other countries that may use your services much more easily. This is obviously dependent on which kind of industry you are working with and also other variable factors. But for the most part, it's just a good idea to be starting a business in South Africa, considering that you'll be trading all across the African markets as a result of the African Free Trade Area Agreement. So I do hope to some extent that kind of gives you a picture of what's happening, right, in the African continent. The first is high population growth rate. The second is quick adoption of digital technologies. And the third is the African Free Trade Area Agreement, right? So let's say you do then start and say, okay, I want to start a business. What tips can I give you to starting a business? Right? If you're starting a business in South Africa, I think it's just important for you to have, we're living in the information age after all, so you must have very good quality information. Consult the experts. That's why they're there. If it's in the legal environment, talk to the lawyers that have relevant knowledge in the particular industry you want to operate in. Don't go blind. Don't think that you can do everything on your own. That's not the nature of how things work. Ask questions to people who know. If you don't, you might find yourself in trouble. The second is know the legal environment. The legal environment in South Africa, although it is advanced and highly developed, it has certain elements to it that differ when you consider maybe the legal environment in other African countries. Though they may be neighbors, they may not necessarily be the same in certain aspects because of the nature of South African society and so on. So you must be very clear about who it is that you're working with or where it is that you want to be able to start your business. The third that I would encourage you to do is to know exactly the scope of your service. What are you going to do and what are you not going to do? This will serve with a dual purpose. The first is it allows you to know exactly what kind of resources you have so that you do not stretch them trying to do the things that you did not promise your clients. Secondly, it also allows you to create an opportunity for partners to be able to join you to say, hey, look, I like what you're doing. Let us work with each other. The people that are going to be investing in your business, they also want to be clear about what it is that you're doing. You need to assess whether or not there's need for the things that you're doing and how much they'll be willing to invest to you and how much amount of risk they'll be willing to take, right? The third is you need to study competition. You need to study competition in your local community on the national level as well as on the continental level, right? That's assuming you're considering going outside of the country at some point. You need to know exactly what it is that they're doing, how they're doing it, how much it's costing them, etc. You may not have the exact amounts of these figures, but at least have estimates of what that looks like. The competitive environment is very broad, and you need to make sure that at least you arm yourself with some reference knowledge, whether or not you'll be doing something that is expected or standardized in the industry, and at what point you do not end up doing way more than is necessary that customers are not looking for or will not appreciate. There's no point in doing the extra that is not quite needed when the basic minimum is only required for some instance, for some products, right? So the last bit of advice that I would then give you is to say, always keep learning, always keep learning, always keep adapting, always keep overcoming. You learn, you adapt, you overcome, and you automate that process. That needs to be your motto every single time. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a high-level manager, you need to make sure that you're learning quickly. And after you've learned quickly, you need to adapt very quickly. And after you've done that, you need to also be able to automate the new knowledge that you have learned, and so that you do not end up making the same mistakes or suffering the same consequences in the future. So I do hope to some extent this has helped you. And should you have any questions, feel free to ask, and hopefully we'll continue with these videos. This was a little bit longer than I had expected, but I believe that we can share knowledge in the ways that help us more than we suffer a little bit of time discussing in detail what it actually means to start a business. So I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and should you wish to look at more of what we're doing, don't forget to follow our rest of our social media sites on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter as well. Enjoy the rest of your day.